Let's check out a piece from Jeremy Harris of Como today. What will it take to curb freeway encampments in Washington? This most recent one, crazy dude, homeless, probably on drugs. He chucks a fish tank onto Interstate 5, amongst a bunch of other stuff. You got a bunch of people living in homeless encampments, tossing stuff into traffic, total safety issue. Who's to blame? Who's going to take care of this? Let's watch the segment.
I thought it was just another, assault or something going on.
I came over here and I noticed all of this commotion.
Sir, we would like you to come out.
Troopers and patrol officers responded here to reports of a male throwing items off of the freeway.
A rush hour report of debris hitting cars on I-5.
I think the first one was a Lime bike.
Brings troopers back to a familiar spot.
First of all, they've been trying to...
A Lime bike. We've got those all over Seattle. I see them in Lake Washington fairly often, and you're like, oh, that's nice. Good battery, electric bike in the water. Lime bike. Just hurl over an overpass because that's where the homeless encampment is, into traffic.
Lock this little area down.
And a stubborn problem, creating serious dangers for drivers on Washington freeways.
Because we don't want more debris to come down and strike vehicles and possibly injure somebody.
That's
it was
reasonable.
5 p.m. during the Friday commute when people driving on I-5 here in downtown Seattle at Bourne Avenue called 911 to report someone was hurling debris onto the highway. When troopers got here, this is what they saw. A man in a homeless encampment chucking things onto cars below. Troopers say when they approached, this man hit and injured a trooper with a pole. That led to a response from negotiators who tried to coax the man out.
We're conducting negotiations, but this gentleman is under arrest.
A crowd gathered on the overpass here for hours. They watched and waited, and police used drones to survey what the man was doing and used a speaker to try to get him to come out.
Since that guy right here, just guy throwing off, garbage underneath the passage, which I can't understand why they just can't go under there and get him.
Sincere Antonio Harris lives next to this scene, and he says sadly this is something he saw coming.
They had a whole little homeless camp, was it last year ago? They cleaned up the area. They drove this guy out, which... we thought was gone, but obviously not.
This overpass has had several homeless encampments over the years. The state and the city of Seattle have cleared them before, only for them to come back.
This should have been done, though. I don't understand why that wasn't done. They locked the area up over here on Pike, in between Bourne, and a few other places, but I can't understand why they would not do that.
This camp is on property owned by the Washington State Department of Transportation, but it's up to troopers and police to deal with the public safety issues here, like the guy who was throwing things onto the freeway. Como News has reviewed dozens of state patrol cases of items being thrown at cars around Seattle. Many of these incidents correspond to areas with homeless encampments, including here at the I-5 and I-90 interchange and in downtown Seattle. The state has spent $49 million cleaning up homeless encampments from state right-of-ways in King County.
If you drive up and down the I-5 corridor now, you're going to see a lot less homelessness than you did in a year ago.
Governor Jay Inslee has touted the state's success with resolving major encampments from around the freeways, and he is correct. The largest camps in Seattle were cleared, but some, like one outside Harborview Medical Center, were only removed after major public safety issues.
Look at that explosion.
That's too many times.
Do you remember that one? This is the last time I'm going to stop the video. Remember that one? You had a tent out in the open in the trees, wedged in between Interstate 5 and Harborview Regional Medical Center. When something bad happens to you in the Pacific Northwest, they send you to Harborview. Well, this encampment exploded because there was propane tanks and they just boom went up. That was drugs, homelessness, drug dealers. I mean, just insanity. But that's who we're letting live on the sides of interstates. Yeah, I mean,
This is going to continue to happen, Amigo, because our hands are completely tied.
The issue of freeway camps has also become a talking point in the Washington race for governor.
This administration's inaction has caused a dangerous situation for our state.
Republican Dave Reichert says he wants Washington to follow the example of California Governor Gavin Newsom.
We have now no excuse with the Supreme Court decision,
who just signed an order mandating encampments to be removed from state property and pushing cities and counties to do the same. Reichert thinks Washington needs a similar executive order.
So how many years has it taken before we've gotten to this point where we have all gotten to the point where we're totally frustrated and waiting for some action?
Democrat Bob Ferguson said he supports the aims of Newsom's order and would issue one if necessary. Ferguson says if he's elected governor, he would ensure state agencies and local governments move quickly to clear dangerous encampments while treating people with dignity. He also pointed out the fact the state lacks permanent and transitional housing resources, as well as mental health and drug treatment services to ensure people stay out of homelessness. The intersection of public safety and homelessness, like what happened here at Boren Avenue, is an issue people in Washington are watching closely. So what's the plan for keeping it from happening again? Well, WashDOT sent out their crews after that standoff, and they're now securing the site with new fencing in the hopes of preventing anybody from putting up a new encampment there and hopefully keeping more debris from being chucked down onto the freeway. But it's also up to the state patrol and Seattle police to continue to monitor these sites and for drivers to report things when they see something suspicious going on around the freeways. I'm Jeremy Harris reporting in Seattle.
From an overpass standoff at Boren and I-5 to a King County courtroom, the suspect accused of throwing a bunch of stuff out onto the interstate, hitting and hurting a trooper, and damaging vehicles stood in front of a judge. While we were told not to show his face, we did hear his voice as he spoke up several times in court.
So just listen to the prosecutor.
The prosecutor argued that the suspect be held on $100,000 bail for a multitude of reasons. First, because of the current allegations against him, tossing a lime scooter, a knife, a fish tank, a pole. But also due to his previous criminal history.
Let's have 7 soul-related convictions.
The judge agreed with the bail request.
The court is going to set bail at this time in the amount of $100,000, which would be bondable at $10,000.
The standoff this man is connected to lasted for hours. During all this, new court documents say the suspect charged towards officers, swinging something at them, and at one point had a knife in his hand. The trooper who was hit by the pole was not seriously injured, according to authorities.
This has been an ongoing deal. Every now and then, this is Interstate 5 in the heart of downtown Seattle. You couldn't pick a worse place to have an issue like this pop up. Like, hey, you know what? There's a homeless dude. He's just chucked a fish tank onto Interstate 5. Now he's assaulted a trooper with a pole. He's running after people with knives. Don't you love how the court system, the judge and the attorneys are acting like this guy is sane? Like they're treating him with respect. This guy needs to be in a mental institution. This guy needs to be in treatment. He needs to be in detox, maybe a combination of the two. And he probably, if he's sane, he needs to be in jail. None of these places where he is. And he's got, 7 convictions? This is the problem we have as this progressive society where we're trying to treat people with dignity. This guy is crazy and whacked out on drugs. That's why he's talking to himself. I mean, we're pretending that he's sane. We're pretending that he isn't just whacked out of his mind on some kind of drugs. And when Jeremy says at the end, what are we going to do here? And physically they try and, box off the area where the guy's been living. But all you're doing when you are sweeping these encampments, like California is doing, because Gavin Newsom is putting a full court press on homeless encampments because of his 2028 presidential run. That's my theory anyway. And he's putting pressure on London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, to clean things up and also, Los Angeles and get things going, folks. When we've had 4 or 5 years now of, you know what, we need to be compassionate towards our fellow human being, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but allowing them to just live wherever and huck a, fish tank onto Interstate 5, that's a hard no-go. That's a hard no-go. Now, the real issue, and Jeremy touched on it by saying Bob Ferguson, He's our attorney general, and I am not a fan. Let's say I'm a Dave Reichert guy. He's who went after the Green River Killer. I'd rather have a cop. I'd rather have a sheriff in office, because I think that is what Washington State needs right now. You need somebody to drop the hammer, because all of this having compassion for a fellow human being is exactly how we end up with a crazy, lunatic, drug addicted felon throwing fish tanks and lime bikes on the interstate, going right through the heart of downtown Seattle, one of North America's biggest cities, of this nature. Just whacked out people. But be compassionate to them. Sir, you can't yell over the judge's voice. No, that guy can do whatever the F he wants, because he's mental. He's mental. And getting back to what Jeremy touched on with Bob Ferguson is, we don't have enough housing for all these folks that we're sweeping out of these encampments. Whether we're sweeping them underneath the interstate, and WashDOT is responsible for those areas. We don't have enough housing for them. We don't have enough treatment for them. We don't have enough mental institutions to house these people. We don't have enough jail space. They're basically not booking misdemeanors in King County because they don't have enough space for all the felons that we've already got in there. Plus, we don't have enough public defenders. We don't have enough judges. The whole system, to me, it's almost like this is by design, to just let these people run around wherever the F they want, because decades ago, we all saw, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and now we've got this whole justice reform thing. It's all tied together. This didn't just happen overnight, because this has happened in city after city after city, and you're seeing the end result. Some whacked out mental dude on drugs with a criminal history tossing stuff onto the interstate. And what do? We need to show him compassion. And you need to throw him in jail. But somebody who is mentally ill, who's been whacked out on drugs for a long time, that's not going to go well. And that is exactly what you've got going on in cities like Seattle, in cities like Portland, in cities like San Fran. You can do all the sweeps you want, but at the end of the day, these people aren't going to take housing. They're going to go right back to the environment, because that's the environment they want. They want it to be Freeattle. Here's a needle for you. Oh, you're not using needle. Here's some tin foil for you. Yeah, you don't need tin foil. Oh, here's a blanket. Here's clothing. Here's food. Here's a tent. Here's more tents. Here's another tent. Here's a booty bump kit in case your veins have collapsed from, continued heroin use, and now you need to put it in your backside. Those are literally all things that our government, with taxpayers' dollars, has given out, because harm reduction says that whenever people are ready to get into treatment, they will. These people are so far mentally blown. When you are throwing a fish tank onto the interstate, that's your sign that we're not dealing with somebody with a full deck of cards. And you could see this guy running around underneath the interstate, going through garbage, picking stuff up. His pants are barely on. You're dealing with somebody who is not mentally there. And yet they put him into this, legal system, and they expect him to be normal. This guy's not normal. He's not going to have a normal reaction. He's yelling out because he's in a whole nother world. And that's what these encampments are filled with. They're filled with people screaming at clouds, screaming at the trees, going through garbage. How about the other park that I visited with Jeremy and Andrea Suarez, where Steve Irwin has himself convinced that he's, mining for gold and mining for diamonds in a park in Seattle, near downtown Seattle. How about that? You've got people that are whacked out of their mind on drugs. And, Steve Irwin had an excavator in the park. If you haven't seen the Steve Irwin story, I've got a handful of videos on that. It's like, oh yeah, you're dealing with people with mental issues, and you can't treat them the same way that you would treat a mentally stable individual. It's just not happening. And for all of those reasons, you can't sweep your way out of this. All the emphasis is on what Gavin Newsom is doing. Doesn't matter what he's doing because it's not going to work. You can do sweep after sweep after sweep. These people don't go away. They're not going to just, well, I've been swept 3 times. I guess I'll go back to my old job and, get a house and get off the drugs and get off the whatever, get off the fentanyl and just stop living outside. And I guess I'll just go back to my normal life. Doesn't work that way. These people are in a system and they are stuck. They are addicts. They are mental. And yet we want to say, wow, we need to be compassionate towards them. Getting them the help that they need would be compassionate. And treatment is housing. It's one of those things I always remember for Andrew Suarez. It's housing. You got a roof over their head. They're getting the help that they need. The problem is that we're not involuntarily doing that. Guy like this, he needs to have a little help. And I don't think being compassionate towards him is putting him in jail. This dude needs to be medicated and then probably taken off the drugs that he's on. Who knows what he's on? Meth? Fentanyl? Combination? Who knows, right? Who knows? So the issues that we saw, those are the surface issues. The real issues are, what are we going to do with all of these guys just like this dude, Mr. Toss the Fish Tank onto I-5? What are we going to do with all the other Mr. and Mrs. and Miss Toss the Fish Tank onto I-5s that are living throughout all of our parks, our WSDOT spaces, sides of the streets, downtown, just anywhere they want, because we've been so compassionate to let our fellow human being live wherever the F they want. And now all of a sudden, there's a public safety, point to this where we've got to clear these out. And you've got our governor who steps in for the glory shot every now and then. Yep, we're cleaning things up. Yeah, but it's been an absolute train wreck for how many years? Because we haven't cleaned anything up, and then the pandemic just exacerbated everything, and homeless encampments just exploded because they knew they weren't going to get shut down. I mean, they were bringing, down in Venice, they were bringing couches so they could watch the sunset. I mean, the world was their oyster. And these guys as well, too. They just load up everything you want in your encampment underneath the freeway, because at one point in time, the state wasn't clearing those encampments because they were WSDOT. And so you've had all of this crazy stuff. The University of Washington, the U District, the U Bridge homeless encampment was another. That's where I met Jeremy for the first time. He was out covering that, and I knew he was going to be out there. I wanted to go, see what was going on. And it's because you've got land owned by the Washington State Department of Transportation, and they don't really have the organization to clear out the homeless encampments. So you've got this you got this whole convoluted system with the blind leading the blind, and then the cops and the troopers, because this is an interstate, have to intervene with issues like, hey, Mr. Fish Tank onto the freeway, we need you to come here. And it shuts the city down. I mean, this was a huge thing on a Friday. This traffic shut things down. I mean, it's terrible. You should not have this happening, but you do. And you will continue to have this happening because these folks aren't going away. They're not going away. We've allowed them to take over. And they might go away physically a couple of blocks, but then they come right back. We're seeing that in San Francisco. Story after story after story of, they went about 3 blocks away because they don't want to carry their stuff. They got a lot of stuff, and then they just bring it right back. And the minute the cops are gone, Bob's your uncle, they set up camp again. So what are we going to do? Man, it's going to be years before anybody comes up with the ultimate solution, right? If they ever do. And frankly, I don't think they want to. I think this is just how the game is going to be played out. Yeah, we're just going to have to deal with a lot of homeless issues. And that's what happens in big blue Democrat-run cities. Yeah, make that vote count. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff. And this issue is not going away. So more to come. And I'm sure Jeremy will be covering this because this is one of those big topics of, hey, shutting the city down. How'd we get there? And what are we going to do moving forward? We'll keep you posted. Thanks again for being here. We'll catch up in the next episode. Bye for now.